Cool. I think we are live, Brad. Looking at the bottom there, looks like folks are trickling in a little bit. So we'll give it just a couple minutes before we officially kick this off and kick it over to Brad and learn about himself and our goalie and his credentials in backpack hunting and what he's going to teach us tonight. But how have you been, Brad? In the meantime, draw any good tags this year?
Man, yeah, I've been good. I literally just got back about midday today from scouting mission for mule deer. Um, so yeah, I've got a handful of tags in my pocket and just can't come soon enough, you know. Same deal every year.
It
So
Yeah, it feels like after July 4th, for me, and I think everybody else too, it's like you get through the 4th of July and, if you're at the lake or whatever you got going on camping, and after that, it just seems like it's go time. I kind of
yeah.
had a waking this week that elk season's going to be here before we know it, and that's what we were just joking about right before we jumped on here was, I'm also a mule deer guy, but I focus on elk, especially during archery season. And Brad was throwing some grief my way. I need to pick up the bow for deer and the rifle for elk, which is going to happen a little bit this year. But yeah, so I'll kind of kick things off and then I'll pitch it over to you, Brad. But thanks everybody who is on here right now, and then we're still seeing some folks trickle in. But appreciate you guys taking the time out of your evening to come learn about some backpack hunting. My good friend Brad here, I've hunted with him a couple of times. Never on a backpack hunt yet. We definitely need to make that happen. But as far as anything backpack hunting goes, if I were to have any personal questions with my contact list, I would call Brad. So I'm excited tonight for him to teach us some stuff and dive into some cool things that he does and just a few like administrative things. Make sure you guys are using the chat down below. Let us know where you guys are coming from. Talk amongst yourselves. Go ahead, use that chat function for that. But if you guys have a question that you want either myself or Brad to answer, make sure you drop that in the Q&A section down below, not the chat. Other things, we will be doing a giveaway. Brad's going to be giving away something from our Golly, and then we're going to be giving away, I think, a handful of onX hats as well at the end. So if you stick around for that, we'll drop a link where you can get entered for that. Super easy. And then lastly, before we kind of kick this off, I wanted to let folks know. So we do have an elite deal with our Golly. When I pitch it over to Brad here in a second, I will have him explain what our Golly is and why our Golly was founded and all the cool things you can get there. But if you're an onX Hunt Elite member, you do actually get 10% off site-wide on our Golly, which are some pretty cool things you can get there. So if you're an Elite member, definitely check that discount out. Or if you become an Elite member, you then get 10% off all our Golly. So with all that being said, Brad, do you want to introduce yourself and kick this off?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Dylan. And just one note on the discount. It actually we don't really do sales or discounts. We have a we just don't do it as a principle. So that onX Elite deal is really the only discount that we offer to people that aren't veterans, first responders, military, or guides and outfitters. So it actually is significant for us. But anyways, yeah, thank you all. Thanks, Dylan, for having me do this. I thought a backpack sheep hunting photo was like appropriate to way to kick this presentation off. Um, I am before I get into the meat of what I'm going to talk about. Uh, Still, can you see that, Dylan? Second slide. Okay. Just want to make sure the thing's working. Let me give you a little bit of background on me and my story to all of you out there who I can't see, and I'm sure I don't know all of you out there. I have been backpack hunting for a good portion of my life, a little over 20 years. You know, when I first started backpack hunting, this is like pre-forum days. There was no rock slide. I didn't know anybody that backpack hunted. In fact, I didn't even know if it was something I wanted to do. But it was really born out of my desire to want to get away from people, to want to try and just hunt animals on their own terms. And I just like kind of had to figure it out as I went along. And I learned a lot by just having some really miserable experiences. I did it with learned how to do it with a couple of really good buddies of mine, and that was really the impetus for me founding and Argali, which is a company that I started and I run today. Also design all of our products. If you're familiar with any of you are familiar with us out there. So, anyways, I've been doing it a fair amount of time. I've backpack hunted all over the place, all over the West. Backpack hunted in quite a bit in Alaska, a few other countries. Certainly don't have all the answers, but I have a fair bit of experience under my belt. So, what are we going to cover today? I'm going to really try hard not to put you all to sleep, or force you all to scroll Instagram while you're listening to me here. So we're going to cover a bunch of information. I'm going to try and save some time at the end, or actually, I am going to save some time at the end so we can have a conversation, and then we are going to give away a prize for all of you that stick around till the end. So a lot of this is about backpack hunting. At the very end, I'm going to talk through some strategies, specific strategies for elk and deer, if that is of value or interest to any of you out there. Why backpack hunt? It certainly is not always the best way to kill animals. It's not always the best way to kill big animals even. But for me, there's the most important thing that I get out of backpack hunting is really the experience. I love the solitude. I like hunting by myself or with a close buddy or couple of friends. I like falling asleep under the stars. I like waking up on the mountain. That is the experience that I love about hunting. It's what drew me to backpack hunting originally. It's what I still love about backpack hunting. And like I just got back from being 3 days out scouting by myself for mule deer, and I was reminded thinking about this presentation about how much I just love falling asleep under the stars. And that is one of the things that I continue to enjoy, and I think anybody who backpack hunts understands. So it's an experience thing. It's really fun, right? Hunting can and should be fun. It's not just about, killing an animal. It's not just about that one thing, that myopic focus, even though that's what we all want to do. It is a fun experience, and I think backpacking adds an element of fun. It can also add a fair bit of misery, which hopefully we can avoid by talking through some of the things we're going to talk about today. And I also think there are strategic advantages to backpack hunting, which I'll get into at the end of this presentation. There are also, if anybody wants to remind me at the end to talk about this, there are times when backpack hunting is not strategically advantageous, but I think there oftentimes are advantages to backpack hunting as well. All right, so before we get too deep here, I want to talk about I'd say some fundamental principles that I like to follow. There's a guy, number one, going light to go fast. There's an author and an alpine climber named Mark Twight who wrote a great book called The Kiss or Kill. Even if you don't rock climb or alpine climb, I suggest you read it. It's a collection of essays about some of the crazy stuff Mark Twight did. So Mark Twight was an alpinist in like the 80s and early 90s, and he was doing wild stuff. So like solo adventures in crazy mountains in Europe in the wintertime, in the Himalayas, and in Asia. And Mark really pioneered this approach of taking as little as possible so you could cover more ground. Everybody before him, all the famous climbers, they used siege tactics to climb mountains. You would have big teams of guys and you would shuttle gear up. You would go back down, get more gear. You would shuttle it up, and then you would go up another step, down, get more gear. And Mark just said, to hell with that. That slows me down. And to go fast, I need to lighten my load. And so he would just take almost nothing and go for these crazy adventures. The parallel to hunting is that there's a direct correlation between the amount of weight on your back and your attitude, your desire to go over the next ridge, go to that next mountain. And it's easy to just say, like, I'm just going to pack this one extra shirt. I'm going to pack this one extra pair of underwear. I'm going to pack one extra bar for the day. And you start adding all that up, pretty soon your pack's like, it's 58 pounds instead of 54 pounds. That might not sound like a lot, but I'm telling you, like, there's every incremental amount of weight on your back has a direct effect on your physical and mental ability. It does on me, and it does on everybody else I've ever hunted with. And it grows up, the impact is exponentially greater the heavier your pack gets, right? So like 60 pounds, 65 pounds. 65 pounds, 67 pounds to 70 pounds. Like incrementally, it adds up and it taxes you. So just keep that in mind. There's a saying that we don't pack our insecurities, right? So this is like I call them the what if items, right? So we're going to talk about this later, but make lists and stick to them. Don't just start throwing stuff in your pack. Just be like, just in case I need that. Just in case I need that. Like, don't do that. It's a bad idea. You want to be comfortable, but you don't want to overpack. If you get home at the end of a trip and you have 5 items that you never used, unless it's a rain jacket, but if you have 5 items you never used, to me that tells me that you didn't need those items. Or if you have extra food, then you overpacked. If you're not eating all of the food you allocated for the day, you've overpacked. So that's a way, just something to think about. We all like to, I'm a gearhead. I design gear for a living, right? I sell gear for a living. Like I love gear, not just our gear, but like I love gear in general. But it isn't the only thing that matters in backpack hunting. And I think we have a tendency to focus on the gear too much. Now, lightweight gear, good gear will make your life a lot easier, your hunt a lot more enjoyable. But you don't need a bunch of fancy gear necessarily to go backpack hunting. So say that. Last thing I'm going to say, this might be the least sexy thing I'm going to say this entire presentation, but it's just like take your trash out of the woods. One of my pet peeves in life, I hate finding somebody's half-burned peak refuel packaging in a fire pit in the middle of nowhere. It is disgusting. Nobody wants to roll into a campsite and see it, that or toilet paper. So like bury your waste and pack out your trash. Don't half burn it. Don't burn cans. Don't half burn any of your stuff. Pack it out with you. It's just proper ethics. And it's genuinely a pet peeve of mine. It seems to be like more common every year. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. I know I just said gear doesn't matter as much as we all like to think, but we got to talk about it because it does matter. It's just I don't want to make this entire backpack hunting is not just about gear. So multi-use products are always going to be your friend, right? We've got the differences in gear today from when I started are remarkable. There are so many great options for us out there. Sometimes there are too many options for us out there, but we have a lot of great options at our disposal. Fun fact, my first backpacking tent that I ever owned, and I thought was like the top of the line backpacking tent when I first started, was a 7.5 pound North Face tent that could sleep 2.5 people of my size. And to think about where we've come from like that to where we're at today, a comparable tent that we make is going to weigh about 1.5 pounds. So like huge difference in just like the gear today from 20 years ago. Dylan, also, this is a funny onX anecdote I thought about. I remember, I think, when was onX founded?
2009.
Okay. So not too long after I started, I remember that onX was a chip at the time, and I'd plug it into my Garmin. I don't know if I ever told you this, but somebody told me that the future of GPS was going to be on the phone. And I was like, that's great. That's dumb. No one's ever going to go for that. I'm always going to have this handheld brick with me. Um, I'm not great at looking into the future, clearly.
Yeah, it's crazy how things have changed. Yeah, your gear and technology and just everything, rifles, bows, and you name it's going to be pretty wild to see where it's at in another 10 to 15 years for sure.
Yeah. Um, Okay, so like multi-use products are best. Proper layering is important. Speaking about like, in particular, packing your insecurities, like the way I like to run my kit is like base layer, mid layer, some sort of light insulation layer, depending on the time of the year, like heavy insulation, like a bigger down jacket, and then even a rain jacket. But the important part here is like understand like what's going to work for you layering wise, and don't pack anything extra. I don't pack an extra shirt on backpack hunts. That might be an unpopular opinion, but like I just find it isn't necessary. And it just is like I don't change shirts throughout a hunt. Um, so yeah, anyways, just proper layering, know what you need, don't take anything extra. Throughout the year, that's going to change depending on the type of hunt you're doing. So I might not take a giant puffy jacket like I was just on this recent scouting trip, which is the same clothing kit I'm going to bring when I actually go hunting here out in August is like I had base layer, mid layer, and a small puffy down jacket. And that's all I'll need, right? So, sorry, a light rain jacket, but that's all I'll take for my upper body, and then I'll take two pairs of socks, one pair of pants, like no extra clothes. Um, Go light, but don't go light too light at the expense of functionality. I'll get into some tent stuff. What I mean, a specific example with tents here in a second. The biggest weight save, the most, sorry, let me back up. If you're new to backpack hunting, I don't know the experience level of everybody out there. Some of you might be brand new to it. Some of you maybe you have some experience out there. Maybe you have more experience than me. But in my experience, the things that really are important to backpack hunting, if you're new to it and you're looking to make an investment in gear, is like a good tent, a good pack, a good sleeping bag, and a good sleeping pad are going to be really worth your money. I would throw a pair of boots on there too. I did put that on the list, but a good pair of boots. Those five items, I would say, are the items that will either leave you feeling probably more miserable or more happy than anything else out there in terms of just like comfort and your ability to get sleep, which is incredibly important. Stay out of the elements. And a good pair of boots. If your feet get wrecked, you're hosed. Your hunt can be over really quickly if your feet get torn up. Okay, let's talk about sleep systems real quick. Tents and sleeping pads. So the appropriate size tent for the hunt. And you know, there are lots of options out there, right? We make tents. This is not about me trying to sell our tents, but like if you have the ability over time to have a handful of tents, that's a really good one. And I realize that's a lot of money, but if you can acquire these things over a period of like 10 years, pick the appropriate size for the hunt you're going on. So sometimes if you're going on a backpack mule deer hunt, you're trying to sleep on a ridge that's not going to have a large flat spot. That 4-person tent that you were hoping to pitch is going to be really difficult. But if you're planning to camp down low where there's some more flat ground, it'll work great. So like a 2-person tent, a 1-person tent are great tents for backpack hunting. Sometimes a 4-person tent is also fantastic for 2 people, but just like know what you're getting yourself into and where you plan on trying to pitch that tent. There's floored versus floorless. Now I run what you see in this photo in front of you here. This is one of our tents. We call that a half insert. So you've got a floor and mesh netting, right? You can go floorless on a tent. So during hunting season, like I don't ever take an insert with me. I go just super light. I sleep on our half floor or a small piece of tieback between my pad and the ground, but I don't take an insert with me. During if I'm in Alaska and the bugs are bad, or during scouting season, I almost always take an insert with me just to keep the mosquitoes, the creepy crawlies off me. If I'm hunting in rattlesnake country, which unfortunately I'm going to be doing this year, apparently the mule deer I'm wanting to hunt hang out in the same terrain as an unfortunate number of rattlesnakes. So I will be taking an insert with me. I also hate snakes, but I love mule deer, so it's a real tug of war game I'm playing here. Bivy sacks. I'm not a huge fan of bivy sacks. Some people are. The reason I'm not a fan of bivy sacks is most they're like a coffin. I think the idea of a bivy sack is great. I think I'm saving all this weight by just putting this sleeve over my sleeping bag. But then you're going to have to pack a tarp or something to actually shelter yourself from the rain. When you add up the bivy sack and a tarp, it's like, okay, now both of those items combined is as much as a tent. And so to me, I'm like, why bother with a bivy sack and a tarp when you can actually just have a fully enclosed tent? That's just my opinion. Some people like them. I'd say there are some thermal values for bivy sack. So bivy sack over your sleeping bag can add some thermal value. Hot tents, so late season, it's nice to be able to have like a stove in your tent. It's a total game changer. I don't take one during the early season, but anytime October and November, I always have a stove with me because when the weather gets bad, it allows you to stay on the mountain when everybody else is going home. I've had this happen a number of times where I've been out backpacking. It's just gross, cold, wet weather. And after a few days, just like everybody bails. They've just had enough, like not having a good time. They leave, I stay. And eventually the weather breaks and it's like you're still there. Nobody else is out and you've got the place to yourself. Um, And when you're thinking about a pad, make sure you look at the R value, which is it's a temperature rating. I'm going to butcher this. I think it's a measurement of the ability of your sleeping pad to oh my gosh, it's a measurement of how well it reflects heat, I believe. Anyways, there are R values for pads. You want at least a 3 value pad for early season. I'd say a 5 or a 7 R5 or R7 value for late season hunts. The reason that's important is like it doesn't matter how warm your sleeping bag is. If your pad doesn't have the appropriate R value, you're gonna freeze if it gets cold out. If it's warm, you'll be fine. But in those colder months, if it let's say it's down to 20 degrees, you've got a really high quality 0 degree bag, but you only have like an R2 pad, you're going to be cold, guaranteed. I only know that because I've made these mistakes. I have frozen with these. I tried to cheat the system by taking a super light sleeping pad and a warm sleeping bag, and it was just a really rude awakening. So let's see. Sleeping bags versus quilts. This is a really hot topic question for me because there are two I'd say two different ways two different groups of people that think that sleeping bags. Some say sleeping bags are the only way to go. Some say quilts are the only way to go. I own several quilts. I don't. I think quilts are fine and have their place in the early season in the warmer months, but I have suffered enough times during the cold season in a quilt to firmly believe that the vast majority of people who like a quilt have never suffered through a 0 degree night in a quilt. I have. It isn't fun. I've suffered through multiple 0 degree nights in a quilt. So sleeping bags, I think, are, again, my personal opinion. There's just no way you can get around the drafting in a quilt. There may be people out there who are like, I've slept in cold weather in a quilt. My response to you is like, good for you. I think it's the exception of people for the number of people where quilts will work for you in the late season. So sleeping bags, I just think are, if you're going to buy one product, I would just say get a sleeping bag. They're going to be a little bit heavier than a quilt, but you're going to be warmer and more comfortable. And there's a direct correlation between the quality of sleep you get for several nights in a row and your motivation, your mental focus, your ability to execute, all those things. So sleep is incredibly important.
Hey
Um,
Brad, real
yeah.
quick for you, and you might touch on it later, or we might get a question about it. But I've had some really good conversations with you just about sleeping bag degree ratings in the past, and I know that's something
Mm,
that you guys do a little bit different there. But
yeah.
I mean, not to even, I have an Argali sleeping bag, and it's hands down like light years above anything else I've tried. So I'll just do that pitch for you so you don't have to. But like as far as the degree bags, like what is a 20-degree bag, right? Like if I'm going backpack hunting and it might be 25 degrees out, am I okay with a 20-degree bag? I just know we've had some really good conversations about that and
Yeah.
wanted you to touch on it.
Man, yeah, sorry, I should have thought I'd bring that up. That's a good. There are no rules for how companies advertise temperature ratings. It is the Wild West out there, and it's so frustrating as a consumer, right? So when you as a consumer see 20-degree bags, like for until we made sleeping bags, like I think my general assumption was like all these companies are playing by the same rules. Like a 20-degree bag means like I can sleep in this down to 20 degrees. Could not be farther from the truth. Most companies use survival ratings for their sleeping bags. So when they say 20 degrees, what they usually mean is like you won't die at 20 degrees. You're not going to be comfortable, but you're not going to die. Or you're going to be moderately uncomfortable at 20 degrees, but you're not going to be happy. We use comfort ratings for our sleeping bag ratings. So our bags, the way we advertise them is like you will be comfortable down to 20 degrees. The average person will be, which is rare. So it's a good question. I'd say like the way you can assess that as a consumer is like, ask the company, like do your research. Like most companies will tell you if you poke around or you can find it on the internet, like is X brands of this bag, like, is this a comfort rating or is it a survival rating? And there's just a lot of like funny business that goes on out there. And it's unfortunate because I think it's been beaten into our heads so much as consumers, those of us who backpack a fair bit, that like, we hear it all the time where we get customers who'll call us and say like, I want your 0 degree bag. I'm going to be hunting during archery season, but I just want to make sure I'm not cold. And we talk them out of it. And we're like, dude, that is what you'll be sweating so profusely in a our 0 degree bag that you just like you'll be uncomfortable. If you're only hunting during archery season, a 20-degree bag is perfect. In fact, a 20-degree bag, 20 degrees is pretty cold. 20 degrees is like it's a pretty cold temp through even like I'd say like mid third week of October for the most part. 20-degree bag will get you through that season. And then after that point in time, you might want to look at a warmer bag. So, anyways, thanks for that question, Dylan. Sorry, I think I talked a little longer, but yeah, anyways,
No,
really
yeah,
tell me
no,
over the
it's
map.
that's perfect. And I know the conversation we had initially was I think the first time I went backpack hunting or even just stayed, out in the woods, I had like a 30-degree bag and it was like 45 degrees outside and it's like, why am I cold right now? And that sparked that conversation. So no, I appreciate that. And it's there's a lot to learn when it comes to choosing the right bag. But I have your 20, and I was up in Alaska last year in August and it got cold. I can't remember exactly, but it got pretty cold a few of the nights, and that 20 was plenty warm for me.
Yeah, we actually, I'll just tell all of you out there, this is like probably like information you didn't ask for, but the way I tested our temperature ratings, I sleep cold. So the all of last year, I brought a little temperature logger with me that would sync to an app on my phone so I could map out the temperature during the night. And I slept with our like 20-degree bag. I would want to test it to be like, how do I feel? We had our lab testing, but I also wanted to test it just out of curiosity, see like objectively or subjectively, how did I feel last night if it got down to 20 or close to 20? And I could map out the temperature of the night so I knew exactly what the temperatures were. And I knew if I woke up and I was cold and it was only like 25, then I'd be like, there's a problem here. But that never happened. I tested our zero bag down to like 1 degree a couple nights and then tested our 20 actually a little bit below 20 degrees and was very comfortable. But anyways, all right, moving on. Last thing on gear, water filtration. I anymore I use a pretty simple water filtration setup. I don't like pumping the pump style. I use like either a Sawyer squeeze. I use Aquamira drops a lot, or um, I can't be liable if you get sick, but I also drink straight from water sources all the time. As long as it's the head of a spring and there have not been beavers in the area, or actually if it is just, even if there are beavers in the area and water's coming out of the ground, I usually just drink right out of it. Don't think twice about it. I'm not going to advise you to do that, but just know that like there are many of us out there who do that on a regular basis, and I have yet to knock on wood be sick. Might catch up to me at some point in time, but such is life. I already talked about boots, good quality pair of boots. Lots of options out there. There is no one brand that's right for everybody. I don't care what anybody tells you. That's just not factually correct. Boots are like packs. They're like clothes. You got to figure out what fits you and works for you. There's one brand of boot that works really well for me. I got a pair of the same boot for my brother, and he hated them. They were horrible for his feet. So that's just like it just depends on the person. So, but good pair of boots is important. Talked about clothing efficiencies and layering. Trekking poles, I think, are a must-have piece of gear, especially late season, and packing out. I think for some people, they're viewed as an optional item. I really don't feel that way at all, and I never leave home without them. They help both uphill and downhill. I think most people think of them as like helping downhill. You could actually like pull yourself uphill with a good pair of trekking poles. Take some of the weight off of your legs. Um, Man, like there's a lot that goes into thinking about how you keep yourself fueled effectively and efficiently, and nutrition is really important. I tend to, so I'm gonna just run through what I do, and I'll talk about some generalities here. Just to avoid using too much fuel, I don't do a dehydrated meal in the morning. I only do one a day, and that's for dinner. For breakfast, I typically eat the perfect bars. They're like a nut butter bar. I eat two of those. It's quite a bit of calories. It's filling, and it's fast too, so I don't have to mess around with waiting for. I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning because I'm ferociously addicted to caffeine and just can't break that habit. But I have 1 cup of coffee, throw those bars in my pack, get to my glassing spot, and then I'll eat breakfast wherever I'm glassing for the morning. And then lunch is going to be a mixture of different foods. So I'll get into here in a second. But I try and focus on making sure I have like proper amount of fat and protein, really minimize the amount of sugar, which is really hard if you're doing like a bar-based diet. And then I kind of snack throughout the day. So think of like I'll pack some nuts in. I will pack I can't remember the name of it now, but those bars that are just like fruit smashed together into a bar. I'll do cheese, I'll do salami, I'll do jerky, like all like I try and mix it up too. But and I don't count my calories. I've been asked that before, like how many calories should I aim for? My answer is like, I don't know, man. Just like as much as you can, if you're really exerting yourself, like I say like feel free to eat what you can to keep yourself sustained. I don't think it's a good idea to go hungry. I've heard people talk about that. Say, I want a backpack hunt, I run a calorie deficit intentionally to save weight. I think that's horrible advice. You do that for too many days in a row, and it can really bite you in the butt, especially if you kill something and now all of a sudden you've got 30 miles of back and forth to pack out meat. 20 miles, 25 miles, like you can really put yourself in a pinch. So don't run a calorie deficit. And then variety is helpful. So what I do at the beginning of the year is I will make like sometimes 30 to 40 different lunches for backpacking. And then I have them in quart size Ziploc. So I'll buy in bulk, like a bunch, everything I know I want for my lunches. And I've got my spreadsheet so I know what to eat for lunch. I'll pre-package those lunches. And that way, when it's time to go on a hunt, I'm going for 3 days. I just grab 3 lunches, throw them in my pack or my bag, and then I'm off to the races. I come back. It's like I got another 4 day hunt, like throw 4 in my pack and I'm off to the races. Um, and then last thing I'd say is like electrolytes and drink mixes are incredibly, I think they're quite helpful. I am not, I've never been a powders guy. Like I don't like just like adding sugar to my water. And so I still don't. But I do think there are some good products like Element, which is just, sodium, magnesium, and potassium. Those are the 3 elements you need. All the rest of it is just kind of garbage. Like really don't try and just like again like minimize your sugar consumption. I think you can get those sugar spikes that really aren't that great for you in the mountains. So, but I think electrolytes are important. The other one is hammer gel and Durolights. So if I'm having a really big day, and Durolights are like they're sodium, magnesium, potassium pills. Those things are magic, and I will take those with water as I'm going up the mountain. And then last thing I'd say is like for whatever reason sometimes get really like if I have like a solid 8 hour day of packing weight up a big mountain, which I do about once a year, ibuprofen's really helpful for cramps. So anyways, moving on. I talked about this. This is a pretty simple gear list. There's a screenshot of one of mine, but I keep a list for different types of hunts. I have every item weighed out. And that way, when I'm packing, this is like, don't pack your insecurities. It's like, I know what to pack. I change this gear list around because sometimes I'm trying out new pieces of gear. Maybe I'm going to take a 1 person tent instead of our 2 person tent. Maybe, I'm taking a different set of trekking poles, whatever. But I have a list and it allows me to make sure I only take what I need and make sure I don't overpack or underpack. And then I also know what I'm getting myself into weight wise. So the nice thing about this is I can tell you that this kit, let me back up. The biggest variable in my weight on my pack is the food in my kit. So how many days am I going out for? My daily food kit is about 1.8 pounds. So you can multiply that times however many days you want when you're out backpacking. But that's the biggest variable for weight. But the nice thing about this, about everything weighed out, you can train, which I'll talk about in a second. You can train for the weight you're going to have to carry instead of getting to the trailhead, throwing your pack on, and being like, "Holy smokes, this is way more than I bargained for. This is way more weight than I thought this was going to be." Like, there should be no surprises. Like, you can get yourself a simple scale on Amazon for pretty cheap and weigh everything. And that way, you know exactly how to train. You're not going to surprise yourself and have like a bad outcome at the trailhead. Just like a quick anecdote on that, because I've seen this happen quite a bit. I just this last year I was on a hunt, and maybe they're on this presentation for all I know, Dylan. But there were two gentlemen, incredibly nice guys, that had come out from Florida to go on a hunt. And they were, I think I ran into them about a mile into our hunt, and they were planning to go back to where I was going, which was about another 7 miles in. And they were on bikes, and they were planning to bike all the way in. They had too much weight on their back. They dumped the bikes about a mile in, and they were trying to figure out what to do. But the point of the story was like, I don't think they had ever like weighed their packs. It was clear that they it felt like a surprise to them how difficult it was to move with that weight on their back. So, anyways, gearless are helpful. If you don't have one, make one. It's just a little bit of time, and you can just kind of amend it over time once you put in the initial effort. All right, training. Man, I got a lot to say about this. So I didn't tell you all. Part of my story is like I played soccer through college. I'm an alpine rock climber. I'm a former mountain bike racer. I do a lot in the outdoors. I live right against foothills here in Boise, Idaho. I think that training is overblown within the hunting industry quite a bit. I think you need to be fit, but we don't all need to look like bodybuilders out there in order to have a good time in the mountains. If you want a backpack hunt, you need to have some moderate base of fitness, I think, to have a good time. So let me go through some like general ideas about training, which is running is helpful, but it can also be a massive waste of time to train for backpack hunting, especially running on flat ground. The only time I think running is helpful is to build your zone two cardio, which is sort of your, let's say, your long form endurance. So doing like long, slow runs periodically can be quite helpful. Or if you're trying to lose some weight to get more fit, it can be incredibly helpful. Mountain running, which I do about once a week, I think is a lot more helpful. But running on flat ground for any period of time is not going to help you pack heavy weight. There have been studies that show that the military has done that show this to be true. So running is not, I'd say, like as a part of a training program can be quite helpful. As your only training program, like you could expect to see limited results in terms of how it translates to you being able to pack weight in the mountains. Um, I really do like interval training. So if you are going to run, and this is something I actually do in the wintertime, if you're working out inside, get on a treadmill, crank that thing up as high as it goes, or tilt it up as high as you can, and go as hard as you can for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever you can. Tilt it back down to flat, recover for a couple minutes, and do it again. And do that a few times. Much better exercise that's much more sport specific and much more realistic for the kind of situation you might find yourself in a hunting environment, as opposed to just running at a steady pace on flat ground for whatever, 30 minutes. But again, so running helpful, but I wouldn't rely on it too much. Rucking, if you're not doing it, work it into your schedule, your workout schedule in some way. It is I think the best thing you can do to train for backpacking in the mountains. I don't do a lot of it, so I'll do it leading up to the hunting season. I'll probably do it 3 times a month max, and I do it heavy. Do whatever you can. I use water in my backpack, so I'll put a 5-gallon jug of water, add a bunch of iron on top of that. When I get to the top wherever I'm going, I don't go for super long, 45 minutes, dump the water, come right back down. And I go as fast as I can for that 45 minutes. And that tends to work really well for me. Even if you can ruck on flat ground, it works really well. It's way better than running for training your legs for walking around the mountains. So yeah, do some leg strength stuff, do some cardio. And then also work in some longer form workouts, whether that's mountain biking or running, something that is not just like 20, 30 minutes in length, and do that maybe like once or twice a month. Consistency is key. I hear a lot of my friends talk about need to get in shape for hunting season. Well, hunting season is not that far away. So, and it's better than not doing anything before hunting season. It's a hell of a lot easier to just try and stay in moderate shape all year, and then just kind of ramp up for hunting season. But I know we all got to do what we got to do. Everybody's got kids, jobs, whatever going on. Life's busy, but take it for what it's worth. It's easier to stay in shape than it is to try and get in shape every year. Easier to stay in shape all year, excuse me, than it is to try and get in shape once a year. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. Let's talk about how we can use e-scouting for both camp spots, and I'm going to talk about water sources. Now, why does this matter? This is something I genuinely do. Before you get carry away trying to figure out where these spots are and you out there, these are random spots, not in places I actually hunt. But go for it if you want to try to figure out where they're at. So the reason I will, before I go on a backpack hunt, is I will go drop pins for camp spots and for potential water sources. Um, the reason I like to do that is because it helps me figure out where I might want to camp. But you can actually, I mean, using onX and the not the Google Earth imagery, but the aerial imagery, you can really get a sense of where those flat spots potentially are. Could save you a lot of headache from trying to figure out where you're going to camp that night when you're on a hunt or just trying to find a flat spot in the dark, which again, I've learned this the hard way. Like this is the way I used to do things. And one time I was up till midnight trying to find a flat spot to camp, believe it or not. And it was not a lot of fun. So now I drop camp pins or pins where I might want to camp or where I think it's flat enough to camp. I like to try and camp a few notes. Stay out of sight. You don't want to be camped on a ridge where everything can see you moving around in the morning when you're getting up, moving around your tent. The camp spot below on the bottom of the screen there, it might look like it's on a ridge, but there's actually, if you take a different angle, it's actually a little bit below the ridge, and there's some trees, a few different trees kind of around this little flat spot. Um, but yeah, just stay out of sight, try and keep a low profile, and then you want to camp in relative proximity to water. Okay, this is like key beta. Sometimes finding water can be easy, and sometimes it can be really, really difficult. And if I can, which I'll get into to later here, strategically, like I like to camp up high. If I can, be up high in glass, but the problem is there's not always water up high. Oftentimes you have to like search for water. So trying to find those water sources in advance using onX, it can be really, really helpful. And I'm not talking about just using the USGS data layer. You see that blue dash line on the left there, which shows a potential stream, right, or a non-perennial water source, according to the USGS layer. I think Dylan, is that you guys use is it USGS? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Now I have found that to be like pretty accurate. Sometimes I would say in this screenshot right here, based on the amount of green I see in that photo, like I bet there's a little trickle of water coming down that drainage somewhere. But you notice I have this blue pin kind of on this spot in the middle of the screen there. Now the reason I put a pin there is like USGS does not map out accurately all the water sources. And I have found some really great springs that have allowed me to camp up high and have access to water close by that are just not marked on a map. So what I look for sometimes, and I find when I'm hunting an area using aerial imagery is, you can follow this obvious kind of sort of like green trail down this mountain here, and what that tells me is like I mark this as like a maybe there's water here, maybe there isn't, but there could be, and so I might go check it out when I'm out hunting. So just like spend a little time wherever you're going, mapping out your water sources. Look not only at the perennial streams, but the non-perennial sources, the dash line. Um, and then if you're looking at a photo, like an aerial image of in this case, a non-perennial water source, a dashed line, those can always be suspicious. But if it looks kind of green, but you can tell all the other imagery is from the fall colors. To me, that tells me there's clearly water there because it's still green, or there's likely water there. So map out your water sources in advance. It'll help save you some time.
One other quick note on that too. So you can use recent imagery we have now. So when you turn
Yes.
on recent imagery, it's not going to show you as detailed imagery as our normal base map imagery does. So for example, if you want to zoom in really tight and see like a wallow in a park or something of that nature, or a specific rock or a tree, you're not going to get that level of clarity with recent imagery. Um, but what you're going to be able to do is within 2 week segments go back and you can look at different periods of the year. So if you're looking at imagery from the spring, it's all going to be green, right? It's going to be a little bit hard to depict what Brad is looking at there with that drainage and possible water. But if you look in, say, August or September, October, when stuff is starting to brown and it still is showing up green, it might be a good indicator. So just one other quick note, don't expect the same level of clarity with that imagery, but you can look at it from 2 week increments and it can be pretty helpful in finding water.
Yeah, cool. All right. One other, God, this is such a blurry image here. Apologize for that. Looked great when I was looking at it on my computer earlier. Um, Plan out your route. So just use the route builder tool in onX. I even if I don't follow the route, I like to build one just to have a general plan. I think when I usually go into the woods, my plan is to just usually follow my nose and kind of go where the animals take me or the animals are. But I like to build a route in advance. And as you can see here, going counterclockwise, start the car. I'm planning to spend a day going up that ridge and hunting the basins on the other side. And then as I'm going to come across to the west here, have another camp that I've you can't tell because this is blown up so much here. Um, but you can camp I have a camp laid out, some trees there, and then coming around and wrapping around back to the car. But route building is incredibly helpful if you're planning to do a loop. So last thing I'll say on that. So yeah, before you go, I told you the story about the two gentlemen I met from Florida last year. That isn't the first or only time that has happened to me. I have been in over my head. Many times, and that's how I learned some of my best lessons. Um, Pack everything out you take in. I think we already covered that. I think I beat that one to death. Enjoy the journey. It should be fun. This should be a fun experience. I think it's really important to just keep in mind that like when you're going backpack hunting, have a good time, enjoy the entirety of the experience. If you don't shoot something, like whatever, there's always the next hunt, there's always the next trip, but just like have a good time. And it's easy to lose sight of that when we're just like myopically focused on like, I got to kill something. I get it because I'm that way, but also you have to like enjoy the experience. Okay, a couple different strategies for backpack hunting. Two that I'll cover here. One is like the mobile strategy, and one is the base camp strategy. I like both of these in different situations. My favorite way to hunt though is the mobile strategy, which is like just I'm on a wandering trip. I've generally got a route planned out, but I don't know where I'm going to end up. I might see a deer off to the east, and I was planning to go west 3 miles that way, and it's like, you know what, I'm just going to cruise that way and check it out and see what's going on over there, and then I might cruise over here and I'll eventually make my way back. It's really fun. It's great for new areas. It can also suck when you can't find water or you can't find a spot to camp because you didn't really didn't know where you were going to head up, or you didn't know where you were going to go, so you didn't do your e-scouting properly. I'm speaking from personal experience here. Um, but yeah, it's just a fun way to just kind of like wander. The base camp, or what I might, this could be helpful in what I call like the spoken wheel strategy, where it's like you're going to go into, let's call it like a basin, 360 degrees around you. You've got spots you can hunt, and then every day you're kind of going up to a new spot. And so strategically, it makes sense to stay in that one, to camp in one spot, because you're going to want to kind of hunt all around you, and you have maybe a good water source down at camp, and that's the kind of one of the best water sources. Um, the downside is that like you have to come back out of camp every night, and there's one thing that I've learned that makes the difference between people that are successful and not successful in hunting is like, are you where you need to be the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day and the last 30 to 60 minutes of daylight, and not at the end especially at the end of the day. um, if you're walking back to camp the last 30 minutes of daylight, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And so if you are using the mobile strategy and you're camping right by where you're at, it's really easy, right? Because you say like, I'm camping here anyway, I might as well just sit here in glass till dark. But if you have a base camp that's 2.5, 3 miles away, and I'll tell you what, the last 30 minutes till dark, you're like, man, I'm not seeing anything. I'm hungry. I should probably, nothing's going to come out. I should just go back to camp. I've done that, right? We all can do it. But it's just, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like you need to stay out until you cannot see anymore because, like so many times that I've shot animals where it's like last 10 minutes of shooting light there, all of a sudden there it is, So, that's kind of the downside of the base camp is like mentally, I think we have a tendency to just be like, I just want to get back to camp because you're tired or hungry, whatever. So a couple different strategies. Let's talk about elk hunting. Um, I prefer to wander when I'm elk hunting, especially for archery elk. Late season elk may be a different story, but archery elk, Dylan, I'd be curious. You're an archery elk guy. I don't know how you like to do it, but I like to. The elk are where they are. It's either you find them and there's something interests you, or there isn't. Um, but I like to be able to wander and kind of figure out where the elk are. If I find a herd of elk or I find a bull that I'm interested in, sometimes you just kind of have to like go where he goes. As he's bugling his way across ridges, you're just kind of like, well, I guess I'm going over there. So it's nice to be mobile and have a pretty light setup and then just kind of follow and kind of dog a herd. Or maybe you find, a different herd, you want to dog that herd. So it's just nice not to have to come back to your camp always because that I've if you archery elk hunt long enough, you're gonna dive down in some deep hole and like the elk are gonna like whatever they give you the slip, you decide and then you have to climb back all the way out to get back to camp if you have a base camp and if you were mobile you're just like well I'm just gonna camp right here. So um yeah, it just depends on the situation. But if you know where you're going, you know the terrain, I think it will help you figure out like what the best strategy is.
Yeah, I agree completely with that, Brad. I think one of the hardest barriers for me when I first started elk hunting was just like, you hear folks say at bats, but just being in elk consistently. And having that situation where you finally got on a bugling bull, but your camp is 5 miles the opposite direction. And I've had that happen. So yeah, if you can camp and stay with them and you're close to elk and can find that bull the next morning instead of have to hike 5 miles out and 5 miles back in. Because then, like you said, your mind starts playing like, maybe I'll find one a little closer. Maybe I'll find one over the other direction a mile away from my camp. And end up looking for elk for the next 3 days instead of staying on them. So completely agree with your thoughts there.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, last thing. Like you want to stay close to elk, but like don't sleep right on top of them. Yeah, just just like elk, they need stay close, but not too close. All right, mule deer, the superior animal, as I've been told. Um, no, it's a joke. I love mule deer hunting. So this is like one of my favorite hunt in the world is backpacking for mule deer. So plan your route out carefully. I think more so than elk. Like elk are, especially in the rut, they're kind of silly. You can get away with a lot. You don't have to worry too much about visuals. Like if they smell you, they're gonna blow out. Mule deer are a different cat. Like you're most of the places that mule deer exist, especially big mule deer, is open, relatively open or completely open country. When I'm walking in mule deer country, and like I mentioned, I just got back from 3 days of scouting and walking around. It's a very open country. I have this anxiety that there's a big buck watching me at all points in time as I'm walking around. And you should genuinely believe that because that probably was true. So mule deer, especially big deer, they like to get like bed down where you can't see them, but they can have a really good view of their surrounding landscape. And if you're just bumbling around on, skylining yourself on ridge lines, like more than likely, like you will be seen before you ever see the animal you're pursuing. So just you have to be careful about your route. Um, uh, Walk around with a sense of humility that you are being watched and try not to expose yourself unnecessarily. Try and avoid ridge lines as much as possible. And yeah, stay mobile. You just never know where those deer are going to be. So it's helpful to be able to just kind of like keep checking basins. If you're hunting up high, if you're hunting down low, just keep checking spots to see where the deer are at. Oh, well, that's it. Dylan, I think we're done here. How'd we do?
I
We
think we
keep
did
this
pretty good.
long.
We
Yeah.
got a bunch of really good questions. So we'll definitely stick on for for a bit and answer some questions, but we also are going to throw away a link in the chat here for a giveaway. Brad is going to give away a set of his Argali game bags, which are awesome. It's pretty much the only ones I've used for a long time, way before I knew Brad. And then we're also going to give away a handful of onX hats as well. So, yeah, thanks for everybody who stuck around to this point. We're not, not closing down. We do have some Q&A and some good conversation ahead of us. But go ahead, click that link and get entered. It takes 2 seconds. And then also, I know we threw it in a few times prior, but we'll throw it in again before the end. Just a link to the Argali Elite onX deal as well. So, with that being said, yeah, Brad, if you want to go to the next one, and then I think it's just a question slide, and if you want, you can stop sharing so folks can see
Yep.
you a little bit more. But yeah, there's a ton of really good questions. I'm looking at a sheet of good ones here. We won't get to all of them. I'll try to do my best to kind of categorize them into um, like-minded questions, and then I do know several of these were answered throughout the webinar as well. So just kind of going, I guess I'll go in order for now. Brad, what features and factors do you weigh most heavily when e-scouting for mule deer so you don't pack in too far into unproductive country? So essentially, I think it's, really like what factors do you weigh in when e-scouting so you don't go too far and past good deer country?
Ooh, yeah. So mule deer are they're a pretty simple animal. They need like food, water, and shelter. And I've hunted mule deer in a number of different states. They're like universally those are the things they want. So and that shelter is really like a sense of security. They need a place to lay down where they feel secure. I've noticed that there are certain like vegetation types depending on where you're hunting that they tend to key in on, or certain slope aspect angle. So like early season when I'm e-scouting, I'm looking for those things like if it's hot where I'm going, like they're going to want to be relatively close to water. And I mean, what I mean by that is like typically within like a quarter mile of water. Typically, right? There's a lot of a generality here. So like I will look for, water sources that have good feed and good places where it seems like deer could bed down. And then you just got to go start walking and looking. So that's where scouting comes in, which is hard to do, especially if you live like far away from the state where you're hunting. But just build in maybe more time on the front end of your hunt before the season even opens to go check it out. Um, and then late season, uh, man, late season is a totally different story. Like I'm looking for places where does are going to want to hang out because that's where the bucks are going to be. And so I don't know how to, it's hard to describe sometimes what I'm looking for on the map. But I know it when I see it, and it has a combination of like, good food, good play, bedding area for deer, and then and water relatively close by.
Nice. Yeah, one of the things that I've found really successful, really helpful, I should say, in the past few years specifically is like kind of the inverse of scouting, so more like data collection while I'm in the field and marking waypoints of mature bucks or just deer in general. And
Yeah.
then after the fact, looking at the map, maybe it's postseason or maybe it's when I'm laying in a tent or whatever it is. But it's like, what is common about where I've seen all of these mature deer or the groups of deer, right? And that's where once you do get back at home and you can pull up like TerrainX on the computer and look at the slope aspect and be like, man, they were in between this degree and this degree of slope. Now, when I e-scout moving forward, like that's what I'm going to look for as well. So, yeah, I found it to be pretty interesting to like almost inversely e-scout. So, like data collection in the field might not make full sense to put the picture together, but then after the fact, look at the maps and it's like, is there any commonalities between all these waypoints or data sets that I've, gathered in the field? Sometimes there's not, but sometimes there is, which is interesting then to, use that in the next e-scouting or the next trip the next weekend or something.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, Dylan. So one thing I've done that's like just like apropos to what you're saying is there's one area where I've hunted deer quite a bit. So I've killed probably like 5 deer from this area, like pretty good deer. I keep those pins in black, so my kills are in black. I learned that from my buddy Charlie who does that. So all my animals that I kill, black pin. And I will then I've gone back and looked, and there's for sure a pattern about like where I see them versus where I kill them. I mean, there's a consistency, and it's like, okay, I don't know why they like to hang out here, but they do. So that's really helpful data to have. So yeah.
Interesting. Kind of a fun one here. What is your number one creature comfort you bring with you on backpack hunts?
I don't. Oh man, number one creature comfort. Um, I don't know if there are any kids on this, but lately it's been um, lately it's been Zen, but I'm cutting that out, Dylan. So not that anymore. Um, I'd say
Follow-up question. Do you weigh your Zins?
I don't wear my Zins, no,
Okay.
but I stick to the threes. And in archery hunts, I won't bring them because that gives me a little bit of shakiness. So like I do leave them at home on archery hunts. Um, But yeah, I'd say like extra food. So I might bring like a chocolate bar or like on a really big day. So there are some places I'll hunt where it's like it is an honest 8 hours and maybe 5,000 vertical feet to get to where I'm trying to go. And that day I'll bring like a chocolate bar and like maybe like a real sandwich to eat along the way. But honestly, I don't really bring any creature comforts. Like I just kind of bring what I bring and don't worry too much about it.
Nice. So this one here, my brother and I are going on a late season rifle elk hunt. What do you recommend bringing? 4P or Recon 2P? Both options would be bringing a stove. So two folks, it sounds like late
Yeah.
season elk hunt. They want to bring a stove, 4 person or 2 person.
Four for sure. Yeah, you can't fit two people in a stove in a 2P tent, whether it's ours or anybody else's. So four for sure. And I wouldn't rule out the 6 person in terms of like comfort. A 4 person tent is going to be like our Absaroka at least is going to be really comfortable. Wood pile stove, 2 guys. That's what I would go 100%.
Nice. Yeah, and the 4 person is the one that I have, and I mean I've slept, especially if I'm in like central eastern Montana and places that I can easily pitch it. Like I've slept in that solo mini nights, and it's like I don't ever feel like I need a single person tent unless I'm like, you know, camping out on top of the ridge system where it's hard to pitch one, right? So like I never carry my 4 person, and I'm like, man, it's I wish I had the weight of the 1 person. It's so light as it is. It's kind of nice to have some extra room in there.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
um yeah, that 4 person is my favorite so far.
Nice.
Let's see here. Let's see. Do you prefer a pack with a meat shelf or just enough space to pack gear along with meat? So yeah, real quick, kind of run through your pack
Mm.
setup. What do you typically do? Do you like a bigger pack than you need? What's your pack go to?
I try man, if there was one pack, the pack I use probably 90 to 95% of the time is like a 5,000 cubic inch pack. Like right now I'm running EXO K4 pack. Um, I have not tried every pack out on the market, but I like that pack. I've packed out a bunch of animals and a lot of meat with it. But I think that 5,000 cubic inch is really good until you get to late season. Late season hunts, I carry like a 7,000, I can't remember if it's 7,000 or 7,200 cubic inches, largely because of like, if I'm doing like a longer, most of my late season hunts tend to be a little bit longer. And so I'm packing more food and I'm packing a bit more clothing. So I'll take a little bit bigger pack. Space for food is really like something that can really eat up most of your pack if you're not careful. One of the things I forgot to mention that I do to save space on longer hunts is I'll take my peak refuel mules and I'll put them in a little vac seal bag and then vac seal those. So the packaging takes up so much space and it's a bit of weight, but the space is really the kicker. And then I'll take one meal that is just in the packaging and reuse that throughout the trip. Sounds disgusting. It's not. I've done it so many times. And when I think the last time I told a group that I did that, they were appalled that I didn't wash out the bag. But like you don't really even notice it, especially in late season hunt. It's cold. Like nothing's gonna go bad on you. So it's fine.
Nice. Sleeping bag, synthetic or down?
I mean, I would say there's no reason to use a synthetic bag unless you live in a rainforest. I mean, it's just bulky and heavy and not as efficient for thermal regulation as down is. I've and Man, this is funny. So making sleeping bags, like I've encountered a lot of, I get this question a lot, and there are some people like who truly live in like coastal BC or something like that, where it's like, man, it's soaking wet. I have had down in incredibly wet weather, and I've never had a problem with it because, you know, yeah, I could go on about this, but I really don't think synthetic is a very practical option for the vast majority of people out there. And I would just it's bulky, like I said, bulky, heavy, down compacts, it's lightweight, and you can get a lot more warmth for the weight.
Nice. So everybody knows you can pack out an entire mule deer in one trip. But elk hunting, Brad, how far is your limit? Do you have a limit on how
Yeah.
far you would go for solo elk hunting?
Okay. Man, I'm tough. Yeah, I had planned to talk about this. And that I had that slide. I was like, know your limits. Yes, I know exactly what I'm capable of at this point in my life because I've been in situations where I was way in over my head. I didn't mention like the second time I went backpack hunting with two buddies. We shot three elk in 48 hours, and we're totally unprepared for that situation. Luckily, it was cold. This was like late October, and so we didn't have to worry about meat spoilage. But it was just like I mean, we didn't think we shoot three elk right away, and we did, and it was just like an experience. But I think it depends on the terrain is the answer. Last year I shot an elk. I was not by myself. I had a cameraman with me, and I was about 8.5 miles from the truck. Um, I'm just not very good at killing elk close to the truck, Dylan. I wish I was. I just can't seem to make that happen as much as I'd like. But that situation, like I had to pack like a mile and a half up to a top of a mountain, and then it was more or less like seven miles straight down to the truck, more straight down or flat back to the truck, and we got that elk out in under 24 hours. With just a lot of time spent walking, but I knew I had been to that area before. I knew we could get away with. It was hot, so we didn't have a ton of time. But I do think it's very important to understand what you're getting yourself into, especially if you're going to archery elk hunt. And if you can't get that elk out on ice in 24 hours, like you're really pushing your luck. Um, yeah, it depends on the situation, right? Like if you get a cool night, that helps you. But if you don't get a cool night, all those things factor in. So like you got to be realistic about what you can do once you get an elk down.
Yeah, for sure. Especially how can you get in-reach message out, a text message out, etc., and how close are friends? That's
Yeah,
a good friends, not just friends, like
yeah, yeah.
the friends. Um, Got another one here. So Bob from Alaska, his knees aren't in the best of shape in his late 40s when he's descending the Sheep Mountains with a pack on. It's not good on his knees. Any tips or insights? I know we talked a little bit about trekking poles. Is there like a maybe a method in using trekking poles or when you really use them going downhill?
Yeah, I feel you, Bob. 42, I've had knee surgery. What they don't tell you when you play soccer your entire life is what it's gonna do to your knees when you get older. But yeah, for sure, trekking poles like are gonna help. Not like keeping your legs straight and pounding the ground, like keeping your knees sort of in slightly seated position. I found helps take the stress off my joints and puts them on my legs. Um, but yeah, I'd say, other than that, trying to load your trekking poles as much as possible are two things I can think of.
Merino or synthetic for layers. It goes in a little bit further here to say specifically with scent control, or do you prefer synthetic because it will dry faster?
Man, I don't think of yeah, scent control does not factor into my calculus at all. I think we smell whether or not we smell to the animal, so it doesn't matter. I was 100% merino base layers for a long time. I started wearing some synthetics during the hot hunts, and I have to say, like, I don't love the smell. I do love the breathability that I get from a synthetic. I've used some of the really lightweight some merino shirts, and I like those too. I'd say like I use both. Um, it just depends on the situation, but I'd say I probably wear merino about 80% of the time and synthetics maybe like 20% of the time. And yeah, I don't
Yeah.
really think there's a, a reason. I think it's just personal preference. Like, what do you like? I do like the obviously like the smell benefits of merino are fantastic. And the one thing I'd say is if you're going to buy merino, make sure you know how much merino is actually in that shirt because sometimes shirts are advertised as merino and they're only like 55, 60% merino. And that isn't enough to keep off the smell. And at that point in time, you're not getting the benefits of the merino wool. So pay attention to how much merino is in your shirts.
Yeah, no, it's a good tip for sure. For me, if it's a long hunt, I tend to go merino. If it's a weekend
Yeah,
hunt or a shorter one, synthetic. Yeah,
a
toward
good
the end of a
point.
trip, like toward the end of a longer trip, if I throw on a synthetic shirt, I just plug my nose while I do it. So,
That's a good
yeah,
point, actually.
yeah, it's like longer hunts, definitely I'm grabbing merino. Even if it's a little bit warmer. Can you run a half insert with a stove and not melt it? Are your
Yeah,
tents set up? Okay.
yeah. Absolutely. A lot of people do it. Like I said, when I'm running a stove, I'm not running an insert personally, but a lot of people do it.
This one here is about temperature ratings with sleeping bags with hot tents. Um, I mean, I'm sure if it's like if you're going on a late hunt and you're bringing a stove, are you going to bring a 20-degree bag or a 0-degree bag? Obviously, it depends a little bit if you plan on keeping that stove going all night and whatever, but what's kind of your strategy with that?
I really don't think about the stove and to me they're like two very different things. Like I wouldn't even think about the stove as it affects your temperature rating that you want to bring for your sleeping bag because titanium stoves, the great thing and the unfortunate part of titanium is it heats fast and cools fast. So like, you can keep a fire going, you put some big rounds in your stove like for let's call it a couple hours, 3 hours max, and then it's going to burn out. And the nights are long, especially late season. So like you're going to be in your sleeping bag for a long time, freezing if and having to get up and put a lot of wood in the stove in the middle of the night is not something you're going to want to do. So think of the stove as a way to like dry out, warm up, improve your mood. It's a way to hang out in the tent in bad weather in your long underwear and drink coffee or tea or whatever but not as something that should affect the temperature rating of sleeping bag that you bring.
Makes sense. This one just came through. What was that gel that you mentioned to go along with was it Duralite pills? But you talked about a gel.
Oh, Hammer Gel Endurolights. The Endurolights are a pill. Hammer Gel is the brand. Um, and then Elements are the other um, Elementi Montana company, Dylan.
Yeah, they're great. I actually had one earlier today. I have a few left over and had one today. They
Yeah.
taste really good. And the reason I got turned on to those, I'm not still doing it, but I did the carnivore thing for a little while. Gave that a shot, and that was like pretty much one of the only things that I found that would work with that, if you will. So I got
Yeah.
turned on to them then, and I've used them ever since. They're great. If you haven't tried those, definitely give them
Yeah.
a try. We've had a few questions about this, and we get them all the time. Do you bring a solar panel to charge your phone? Do you bring a battery pack? What's kind of your go-to for making sure your
Cool.
phone's charged?
I don't bring a solar panel. I do bring a battery pack, especially nowadays since my GPS is on my phone. You need it, right? Or I shouldn't say need, but it's quite handy to have. And I've tried a bunch of different ones. I think I have an Anchor one that I lost somehow that I regret losing. I've got a dark energy one. Um, Dylan, I've got that one that I think you gave me. I don't know who makes that one, but that one works pretty well. But yeah, I do bring like one. I try to keep my phone off. I just keep it off unless I'm using it to save battery. And then I don't know if they still make them, but there was this little inflatable lamp. Um, I think it was like 25 or 30 bucks. And it had a little solar panel on the top and it was really light. And you could get like a
Hmm.
trickle charge from it. And it had a little battery in it. But I used that before too, just to I mean, you could probably get 10% battery life from that thing every day if you left it out in the sun. which was enough, has been enough on some hunts. But yeah, some
Yeah,
turkey.
I was actually just looking around because I have one of those. And I couldn't remember. It's like kind of a gear explosion in my room right now, but I can't remember exactly who makes that one. Jackery, I think, makes one. But yeah, I
Okay.
know what you're talking about. It's a light and it has a little solar panel. I carry that sometimes as well, just to have a light in the tent at night, instead of constantly having a headlamp on. But yeah, to for my answer on that, like I have several different ones. There's some that are relatively inexpensive, that do a really good job as well. So dark energy is a good one if you want multiple charges as well. And I've used them enough over the years that I know if I'm going for a 3-day weekend, I can take my smaller, lighter one and I'm good with, 1 to 2 charges. If I'm going for an extended period, I might need the dark energy and, the small solar panel, if you will. So, um, cool. Yeah, a couple more here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here in a little bit. But any additional advice or experience besides, so this is specifically backpacking in Grizz country. Let me caveat.
Yeah.
Any additional advice or experience to share besides packing bear spray or pistol? The one I can think of real quick before I pitch it over to you is obviously making sure your food is in a tree and make sure like when you're picking a tree to put your food in, see which way the wind is blowing. There's no sense picking a tree. So like if your tent is here and the wind is blowing a specific way, if you hang your tree in the wrong direction of the wind, a bear would have to walk through your tent to go find the smell. So
Mm.
like check the
Yeah.
wind at night, and just think through that. Because if you just pick a tree, like yeah, it's there. But if you're camped on an old logging road and the wind is blowing from your food right across your tent, like there's a good chance whatever smells it is going to walk right through your tent to get to it. So, that's my tip. Do you have anything?
No, just like, I mean, just keep in mind, most bears don't want to, they're not looking to kill you or fight you. Most of them, right? They don't want to mess with you. So don't be gripped by fear about hunting in Grizz country. I think I've done it a fair bit. Um, I'd say Wyoming bears are probably the worst bears I've encountered. Hunted on Kodiak a number of times in Alaska, and it's a very different situation there where the bears are hunted. But yeah, I'd say just hang your food, keep your food away from your camp, and keep your pistol or bear spray close by at all times.
Yep. Also, Jack and onX here just told me I'm gonna mispronounce it, but LUCI, Lucy light, makes that light we were just talking about with the solar panel.
Okay.
So there's one LUCI light for anybody who was asking about that. Yeah, we'll do a couple more here. Another Grizz one that we just kind of covered there. Um, if you were only buying one for yourself and maybe one more person to use, would you buy a two-person or for four-person?
We're gonna buy one.
If you can only buy one.
I buy for two people or one person
One person
or
with the
two.
additional, yeah, one or two people.
I'd probably get a, oh man, that's a tough one. We get this question all the time and I struggle with it. Let me say this. If you want the option for a hot tent and two people, then the four is the only answer. If you're trying to go light, then get the two.
I like it.
That's-
I having a four, my vote would be four.
Yeah.
Because
Can't
then
go.
if I want to throw a stove in it, I can. Unless you're really trying to go lighter, like you said, camping on the side of a mountain in a deer bed or something like that, then you run into some problems trying to pitch the four. But having the four person, that would be my personal recommendation. Um, yeah, a couple more here. Do you have any recommendations for getting a good night's sleep in the backcountry? I spend a lot of time in the outdoors, but not a ton of time sleeping. Any recommendations would be appreciated.
Oh man, yeah, great question. So first of all, like just like your sleep setup, so like good bag, warm enough pad. So good sleeping bag and a pad and then pillow. Now, this is not a shameless plug for our Elite Dream pillow, which we are sold out of, but just have a good pillow or because I feel like backpackers and hunters in particular tend to ignore the pillow, like it's not something we need. But sleeping on an uncomfortable, bouncy, inflatable pillow is not a lot of fun. So say, yeah, just figure out, like how to create a good comfortable setup for your head. And then like in terms of routine, like I'd say like I don't know, I find that like just drinking a cup of tea at night helps put me to bed. So whatever your night routine is to help you go to sleep, and then comfortable sleep setup.
Nice. I got two more good ones here. So let's see. This one, I'm glad somebody asked this question because it's my biggest thing of like packing my insecurities is what do you think is essential when it pertains to first aid kits? What do you bring on a
Oh,
hunt?
you're probably the worst person to ask that question. Because my first aid kit, well, I shouldn't say worst, but like okay, essential, like I would say like Advil, ibuprofen, you really should have some of that with you. I carry some athletic tape with me. Um, I carry one of my tourniquet with me. Now I didn't used to, but I always carry one of those with me. And it's not really my first aid kit. That's like in a place where I can access it. I usually keep it in the top of my lid of my pack, so it's not buried. Um, and then what else do I carry? Some gauze pads. And I carry God, what the heck's the name of the company that makes them? My Medic. My Medic makes
Mhm.
two products that actually like I evangelize about because I think they're so cool. One is like it's called like is it like better than stitches? It's like imagine like a zip tie. So if you cut yourself, so instead of having to, maybe you all know about this, but I didn't know about it till a couple years ago. And you can put a piece on the other side of your arm. If I had a cut right here, and then it just zips together and it'll cinch down a cut. So it's like you don't need like if you need stitches, but you're in the backcountry, you can use one of those bad boys. Works really well. I've used it. I had to use it on my wife one time. Worked really well. And then they make these little Band-Aid looking pieces of it's like maybe it's super skin. I can't remember what they call them. But it's a great whatever they are. You can use them for blisters. I've used them to patch up my jacket. So I always carry some of those for myself as a Band-Aid, blisters, gear repairs, etc. Um, I don't know what else I have in my med kit, but those are kind of the main things.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same as you. I do agree with the tourniquet. It's one of those things you probably won't ever need, but if anything real major is going to happen, broadheads are sharp, knives are sharp. I think
Yes.
we've all poked ourselves while quartering a deer or whatever it is. Like, if anything really bad's going to happen, I feel like a tourniquet could be something that is life-saving and is worth the top storage in the pack. So I do the same as you there. Leuko tape is a big one for me. So
Ah,
Leuko
yeah.
tape, I've that's like my tape for anything, and then like the blister, hotspot, whatever. Leuko is the best I've found. Um, but yeah, that's always a tough one because it's like you don't know what you're gonna run into, and that's where I pack my insecurities. And my first aid
Yeah.
kit's bigger than what I need. Cool. So I said one more ago, but two more because this one's a fun one. Bear spray or pistol in bear country? Do you carry either
Pistol.
one? Yep.
But well, I'd say like if you're not like if you're gonna wear a pistol, like practice with it. But funny story, first time I went to Kodiak, Willie, who's the pilot in Grizzly Man, if you've ever seen the movie Grizzly Man, he's become a friend of mine. Um, if you haven't seen the movie, go check out the movie. It's a fantastic documentary, Werner Herzog documentary. But I got onto the dock with Willie, and I was asked about bear spray, and because I had a pistol with me, I was like, "Do you carry bear spray or a pistol?" And he goes, "Oh no, man, the bear spray is just for the guests. I carry a pistol because I live here." And I was like, "Got it." So pistol.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way there. Yeah, there's times I mean, I had bear spray around, and if I really don't think I need anything, I at least have a can of bear spray around.
Yeah.
But if I'm like anywhere, well, anywhere in Montana now, because it seems like
Yeah.
we have as many grizzlies
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
anything else, it's just pistol wherever I go personally. All right, last one here for you. Saved a good one. It's a mule deer hunting one. Do you ever hunt desert mule deer? How would you attack it? Thinking craters of the moon type terrain. Desolate.
That sounds like somebody local to my hood. Um, yes, I do. And I mean, again, like I'll go back, mule deer are pretty simple animals. Like they're not complicated. I think we tend to anthropomorphize too much about what they do or why they do things instead of just sort of accepting them at face value, no matter where they're at. So food, water, bedding, man, it's pretty simple. Um, I think that this is like I think that there's an assumption that mule deer tend to like high country, and think that I've seen probably a lot more big mule deer down low than I have up high. So yes is the answer. I don't know who was asking that question, but I think that focus on those three things, and that's what I would spend time looking on aerial imagery, looking for those places first. Um, and then I would go out, and I guarantee you, especially in the craters of the moon area or any desert country, like water is going to be the limiting factor for mule deer, like 100%.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Appreciate your time, Brad. All of your knowledge and
Yeah.
expertise, and then everybody who, stuck with us to the end. We did our best to cover all the questions, or at least, answer a question that was similar to the one that you asked if you're on here. But yeah, thank you to you guys. We, as you probably know, everybody on here, but we've always got more master classes like this coming up. So maybe we can get Brad to do another one with us in the future at some point. And yeah, just really appreciate your time, Brad, and everything you
Yeah.
guys do over at our gully. So
Happy to be here, and
thank you.
I'll come back anytime, Dylan. So thank you everybody for, yeah, hanging out.
Awesome. Well, take care. Thank you guys so much.